Listen and subscribe to the Table of Truth on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google Podcasts. Welcome, everybody, to Blerdlines. This is your man, Cam. With me, as always, is...
The other Cam, the last actually Negro, the Woko Kaji, the most respected hater on the planet Earth and the galaxy.
As well as...
Hey, yo, this is Josh, a.k.a. the Dark Lord of the Caribbean Sith, known as Darth Coconut.
And always trying to keep us a little bit more villainy. Who else is left?
This is Lord Professor D of the House Morgoth, second of my name, speaker of the nerds, scourge of imbeciles, and breaker of pop culture and mediocre chains.
Today we're talking about the Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. So this wrapped up, we finally all got to see all the episodes and all that stuff. It was running parallel along with House of Dragons. And I think it was interesting because we were kind of like, all right, let's separate each one of them. So we have a good tight review on Rings of Power and a good tight review on House of Dragon, which will be coming up next. But fellas, what did you guys think of your, I would say overall reaction for Rings of Power, just in general? We'll start with you, Josh.
In general, it was trash. It was good. I thought so. It was okay. I think that and high okay. I think the biggest problem that they have, the single biggest problem they have, is pacing. The pacing is very uneven. I feel like there are a couple of story arcs that got way more airtime and are way further out in front of the rest of the other story arcs. Namely the Numenor and the Elven plots are a good ways out in front, and then everything else is trailing noticeably behind it in terms of plot development, in terms of character development, in terms of just general movement. There's a lot of stuff. I think there are a couple episodes where everything was jogging in place, and I think those were unique opportunities to get those other storylines to catch up, and they didn't take advantage of it. They just kind of just jogged in place, and that was a little disappointing. I was hoping that the Harfoot thing would move a little further along, but I think that, in my opinion, that arc is either there's not a lot there and they really just jogged in place to sort of let it keep pace with everything else, and we just haven't seen that yet, or they're just doing a really bad job of managing story elements so that it keeps pace with everything else. The finale was cool. It was good. I guess. I think this is going to be one of those things. I hope it's going to be one of those things where what comes after is going to inform what we've already seen and sort of build on it and make it better. Mm-hmm. I'm of the strong opinion that that's going to happen based on, what little that I know, synopsis wise, what I know of what's coming next. It was a nice little, plot reveal. We finally know who Sauron is, and it wasn't who we thought it was. That was a nice little surprise. Didn't see that coming. It would have been nicer if the Harfoot storyline moved a little further along, that I would care about that a little bit more. But
yeah,
overall, it was good. It was good enough that I'll watch season 2. I'll say that. But I really, 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 really hope that they get the sort of bar graph together of where story elements need to go and how far ahead, and by not letting something get so far ahead of the storylines. Like the dwarf thing is kind of parallel to the elf thing, but then everything else is trailing way far behind.
Yeah. Cam, what are you thinking?
There are things I agree with Josh. The pacing of certain storylines was a little uneven. I don't want to say I wish I cared more for Galadriel's character arc more. And the reason I say that is because I believe that Is the pacing you and I'm assuming D had issues with. I think it's okay, and the reason I say this is because I don't want to compare this to House of the Dragon. It's just two different things happening, and like whereas I had issues with the pacing going a little too fast for me in the House of Dragon, I understand it though. I get it because like it works, and I think this is going to pay off in season 2 of Rings of Power because I look at it as like that whole season was like we are establishing characters. Now, granted, I've never like even in the trilogy of Lord of the Rings, we always wanted to go past the Hobbits because we wanted to see what else was going on. Because the Hobbits, in the same aspect, wasn't as moving and interesting a character because they left out so many things that happened with the Hobbits from the books. But if you put those elements in, it doesn't make for a great movie. I think what we got here is they took some liberties because when you go back and read it, like that is an Ishtar. We don't know who that Ishtar is because all the signs say, spoiler alert, if you haven't watched it, that this is Gandalf. You know, there's things he said that are reminiscent in the movies of trilogy that you're like, oh, this is definitely Gandalf, but he's not supposed to be there. But I'm not gonna like fault them for that. You know, it could be it could be Sauron or Saruman, you know, or one of the Blue Wizards. Who knows? But it does. They've taken some liberties to kind of mess up the timeline a little bit. I'm okay with that. And I think they're just planting the seed. This whole season is slow as it did go and uneven and ebbs and flows. I think they're just laying out the complete groundwork of what we're going to see in season 2. And I'm hoping it's going to pick up a little bit, the pace will pick up a little bit better and we get some more character development because there's some things that I was unanswered, like about the rings, you know, and how they were like the creation of the 3 rings. When are we going to get back into like seeing the other 7 or the other rings that are created? I did like the element, like we touched on the Balrog for like a split second. I thought that was going to be like a major plot line. I guess that's going to be in season 2, you know. They seem to not want to put every egg in their basket for season 1 to hook you. Like Josh said, am I going to watch this next year? Hell yeah. But the criticism is very warranted. I love the twist because I kind of wanted Halbrand to be a ring wraith, but we see who he truly is. Kind of, and it's kind of weird how they went in that direction. Because I never did once believe that the Ishtar was Sauron. Like I never, it was just too obvious. But they tried to give us a red herring in the beginning of the last episode, which was cool. But like I wasn't buying it. But there's like the Numenor, the Ishtar, the elves. I love seeing that how that's going to unfold, but we won't see that until season 2. Very interested on how the queen, I can't even think of her name, of the Numenor moves. We have some like this new character that we really didn't touch on, the daughter of Isildur, or not a sister, Isildur's sister. Like we just see her, she does something, and like we never get any more story about her. There's just like some incomplete storylines, so I'm gonna give them a pass because it's not bad. It's just like it's very annoying to start something and then not finish it, but then like they focus on other elements like the elves, the Numenor, the wizards, and that stuff. But we kind of lackluster on the Harfoots. But we understand if this is Gandalf, it does explain why Gandalf has an affinity towards them in the later movies. So we're establishing that connection, especially with Nori and what happens with her and whoever this person, the stranger, really is as far as the wizards is concerned. Criticisms it's very warranted. Like I said, the only reason that I'm sticking to it because it hasn't fully lost me. I love the world building digitally, like eye opening. It's eye candy. I like the potential of some of the characters and where they could go to. But it's very concerning to see that they drop a character in place and don't really expand in that and don't give a fleshed out version of how this character can be developed. So like I agree with the criticism. But overall, like I'm gonna look at it and be like, yo, I'm gonna still watch this because it hasn't turned me off. I'm very interested in it. I said something offline about like I was more willing to sacrifice my sleep to watch Rings of Power to see where it goes because right when it captured me, I was like, oh, okay, we got something, and then it kind of go back down. And I didn't do that for House of Dragon, but I think that's due to because I'm just tired, not because I didn't want to. It was more because I didn't have the capacity to like really stay up. I literally binged the House of the Dragon like 5 episodes because I was stuck on episode 5 where they finally grew up and became adults, and I watched that whole thing, and I was able to do it. I was like, oh, okay, now I see why this is captivating, why this is cool. But as far as Rings of Power, it's just like I was like, okay, I got to give it like every 3 episodes, it'll bring me back in. I'm like, all right, now this is getting somewhere. And I hope season 2 can lay a better foundation and get these character arcs going where every episode, I don't want to say not every episode, but most of the episodes would be like, all right, cool. I'm looking forward to what's next. Now I'm just waiting because I got to give them a mulligan because I'm like, season 2's got to do a better job of the pacing and make me care about Galadriel. Whose story is it really? Who are we really following? So those are one of those things that kind of irked me, but not enough where I'm be like, this show is trash. Because like I said, visually it's awesome. It's giving me what I asked for. Like, hey, I wonder what happened on that battle when they fought Sauron. How did that come about? Now we get to hopefully season 2 gets to unfold, and I like to know what happens to what's his name, Aldor, the other guy that was trying to kill Sauron, and Sauron has a beef with him. I don't know why they never went into it, so hopefully season 2 kind of goes into that and gives us some explanation about that. But overall, it's cool.
Yeah, I would say. Oh, go ahead,
One more
Josh.
thing. Sorry, one more thing. And it's a credit to the show that it has these flaws, and you still want to watch season 2 because usually something that has pacing issues to this degree, if not me, Cam would definitely be out. Be like, yo, they don't know what they're doing. I gotta go. This is the stuff I gotta watch.
Yeah, I give it a C, like a C plus.
Yeah, I would say for myself. Yeah, I would say for myself, like I enjoyed it. I watched it, so I think I was up to like episode 4, and then I was hanging out with my mom. She hadn't watched any of it, so I rewatched the first 4 episodes with her, and we just kind of chilled and stuff. And she was like, all into it. And I agree. I think that like to D'Angelo's credit, like he was saying, when you have too many characters, you can't tell who is the main protagonist and who's actually pushing the story along. And I think that they probably could have X'd out the Harfoots and the fake Gandalf or the real Gandalf, and that would have actually made the story overall tighter. And if they dropped that story, maybe they put it in season 2, that might even would have helped it in different aspects of it. So it's almost like they had too many characters like rolling around, and they didn't know who they wanted to give the most star time to. Because some of the people, I think each storyline had some pieces that were interesting, but it wasn't enough as a whole to kind of keep that together. And I think like I actually was interested in Galadriel's kind of journey, and I did like the red. I like the reveal with Halbrand because I didn't see it coming, and when I saw it, it started to come together when him and Celeborn were like working on the rings together. Because I was like, wait, didn't Sauron work with Celeborn to make the
Yeah, when the moment he says consider it a gift, it's a dead giveaway.
Yeah. That's when I was like, wait a minute.
It's him.
Also, I mean, if you go back, and you look back at it, he was like, sorry to cut you off, apologies. He was a smith, and I knew the history of him having many forms and tricking. And once he started working with Celebrimbor, the game also clicked in because if you played the game, you know the backstory of how that came about. And I'm like, all right, this is starting to make too much sense. But again, my personal bias, I wanted him to be a ring wraith. But then when she ousted him, there's no king of the Southlands. I was like, oh, okay, it's super obvious at this point who he really is. You know what I'm saying? So,
yeah, I thought that was cool. And then I mean, budget wise, visual wise, freaking bananas. Like it's not even that's just top notch type stuff. And from a concept artist fight, like they just had so much fun like developing the world visually. So that part was the good part. But I think Josh is right on the jogging in place part where they did a lot of just kind of like hanging out, just chilling, just hanging. Like, all right, that's cool, man. But we got places to go. You don't got that many episodes, son. But what I did like was I thought casting wise, everything was awesome. I think that was really fun. I love the dwarves. The dwarves were so awesome. Like it was really fun for them to flesh that world out. It was great to see all of that, so because we hear about it, we've read about it, so it was good to see visually how that all fleshed out. And I think not comparing, like one of the things I was making sure I did the same thing was not compare it to House of Dragons, because this is a lot more like positive, classic, good versus evil. There's generally good people trying to do the right thing, where House of Dragons is more of a everyone's shitty, just depends on who's less shitty. And so, but I enjoyed watching it, and I think I am sticking in for a season 2. But I think they got a lot of work to do in the writers' room to fix up some things, because they'll get that second season just because they already committed to the dollars. But if they really want people to come along for the ride, outside of just the hardcore people, they're gonna have a tough hill to climb. D, what you thinking?
Well, no.
Oh boy.
No. I'm not gonna
applause from popcorn.
No. I'm not gonna re-adjudicate.
Sounded ominous, bro.
Well, look, I won't retread on all the things that you guys have said, because I happen to agree with mostly all of it. I think if this show, frankly speaking, if this narrative wasn't Tolkien and wasn't Lord of the Rings and all the pomp and circumstances that come with that, I don't think it would have worked. I think it would have been considered worse than what it was. But that's just from a writing perspective, because I think, as you guys all pointed out, there's a lot of things, and just pointing to the 8th episode, the finale itself, I was sitting there and I'm watching it, and I'm just like, they set this red herring up and it doesn't make sense in the end. Like why? How do they not know that that's not Sauron? Like that just doesn't make sense to me. But then I thought the reason it doesn't make sense is because not many things have been really established and grounded in this world yet. In a way that isn't passing, or a fleeting glance of this because the story of these individuals. And I think that,
context, if I may interrupt, for context, why do you think it was obvious that it was Sauron?
What that it wasn't Sauron?
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think for me, it seemed that if that's Sauron, then you're going way off book, man. Like in terms of the adaptation, like that doesn't track at all of Sauron's activities during that time. Halbrand was more closer to it, but then my issue with that is if do you not make Galadriel in the end look like a total idiot? Because if Sauron was with her this entire time, I don't know. I just didn't. The twist was okay for what it was worth, but I would have rather seen more of a kind of developed build between Halbrand being there and working with Celebrimbor in a way that wasn't just all of a sudden, here we go, and now we're supposed to roll with this. Again, that speaks to the larger issues that they have with not really developing these characters, turning this story more into a Hollywood narrative in its pace. Galadriel on this journey of revenge to seek out Sauron. And honestly, if you know anything about the story, Galadriel honestly would not seek out Sauron on her own, because she stands no chance against him. and she would know that. So I don't know. It's just some things, some narrative choices. It all comes down to narrative choice. And I think the narrative choices that they've made in the first season, not giving us any real kind of payoff to the Dwarven storyline, other than, okay, Durin is temporarily, I guess, disinherited. And then you have the Balrog emerging from the mithril disruption or whatever. I'm not out of it either. I want to see a season 2, but for now, I don't think they've, as just as a story being told, they've done enough to make me really care about this and invest in it. Honestly, each episode was kind of like, oh, it's on, so I'm gonna watch it, but it became laborious. I agree with you, Cam. There was times where it was like, okay, boom, you got me, but then it just goes down from there, and you don't feel that building to anything other than, okay, we're waiting to see who Sauron is, and we're waiting to find out who this tall guy that's following the Harfoots around. And honestly, at this point, I'm 100% convinced it's Gandalf. And no, I will be very surprised that if it's another character, but I'm 100% sure that's supposed to be Gandalf for this iteration of what they're doing for that series. But and then the rings itself, the all of a sudden now Galadriel is on board with making these rings, and even though she knows Sauron is what Halbrand was Sauron and all these things, there wasn't enough in between those two plot points that made it stick. So
sorry, I want to add something to what you said. You made a really good point. Galadriel, for so smart, she's like the Olivia Pope. And
that's insulting and accurate at the same time.
Yeah, no, because in Scandal, Olivia Pope was like badass until she found her Achilles heel, which is the white president, and she would do the most asinine things for a Saxon. So whereas Galadriel is smart and cunning, and on top of it, couldn't see the obvious in front of her. It didn't make no sense. And for a show to be called Rings of Power, we didn't get rings until the last episode.
Into the last few moments of the episode.
Yeah, the last few moments.
And that really bothered me in a way, because I thought to myself, okay, instead of this cockamamie, let's trick the audience with these gimmick twists, we could have had Halbrand in the Elven, had a reason earlier for him to be next to Celebrimbor or something like that, in which we see him doing these manipulative things. Maybe it's subtle, because I don't even think that twist needed to be who is Sauron as much as what the fuck is Sauron doing and how is he manipulating them into creating these rings. I would have much rather have found out in episode 3 who Sauron was and where he was, if I could see what he's doing and how it's disrupting the peace that was achieved post Morgoth, or thought to be achieved. I didn't care much about the Arven, whatever the elf guy, the black elf name is. I didn't, like that storyline, other than the orcs and the creation of Mordor, and again, you guys talked about it. Too many things that are not connecting. So hopefully, in season 2 for them, they scale back on a lot of this sort of trying to twist the audience and trick them into this mystery of who's who and who's where, and just kind of lay out the story in a way that's building to these great battles that we know are coming, these moments that are going to be key, the changing of the world, if that happens in this adaptation, which seemingly it is going to happen. So there's a lot of stuff to cover, because Tolkien's world is extremely detailed and rich in that way. So if I'm a person that's not familiar with Tolkien and I tried this out, I would be confused by that 8th episode, because again, there's not a lot of things that they're hooking into and developing. We had 4 or 5 episodes where the stranger pops off with his magic and scares Nori, and then that's it. And then we go on to the next episode where something similar happens, and that's it. So they gotta pick it up, figure it out. But I will watch a season 2 because I am a Tolkien fan, and I do think, like the balance, it is good to see a world of magic and hope and that sort of version of high fantasy. As I always say, Tolkien is the original. So I understand why some of the people in the Tolkien world get so razzled when they see this.
Yeah.
Not from a oh, you cast a black elf. No, not from that perspective, but because Tolkien had a very idiosyncratic way of telling stories. And if you're gonna adapt his work, you have to kind of pull from that, and you have to. It needs. That's why Peter Jackson's films are so well. The Lord of the Rings trilogy are so great because it captures the essence of what Tolkien's world is and what his myths are.
Yeah. Right.
Real quick, I want to jump in one last point. Say again?
There was one thing that bugged me. I also wanted to relate that Sauron's character reminded me of Cassian Andor in Rogue One. I couldn't tell if he was good or bad because, like, what was the it sounded like he actually wanted to do good. Maybe I need to read into the lore of this down period for Sauron because he was like, I told you I didn't want to do this. I told you I was a smith. I told you I got this. So he was telling the truth the whole time. And it kind of comes off as like, was he really trying to do good and heal the world? Because that's what Aldar was telling him. Was like he was trying to heal the world before he turned bad or something. So I'm a little confused on how they were trying to portray Sauron just roaming the world, trying to get to Numenor and just get there, or was it he was really that cunning to play like possum, and this was his Kaiser Soze role until he got to where he needed to be, and then the big reveal is like, I'm Sauron, and I've been doing this whole thing. So I was a little confused by that.
Yeah.
How they were pushing that narrative because it made it look like it looked like Galadriel, the fool, when he was like, look, I told you I didn't want to do this, but now you brought me here. Now I'm going to be the badass.
Well, that's my point, because again, we know that he could not have thought he could craft the rings in Numenor because he needed elven magic, right, smith to do it. So the idea that he wasn't trying this whole time, he wasn't trying to manipulate his way to what's the Celebrimbor's
Lindor?
No,
Linden.
Linden is Gilgalad. That's it's something with an E. Help me out. It's what's its area whatever. I'll get it right. But he the fact that he's not trying to get there in any way, and that Galadriel kind of seemingly brings him there by pure coincidence or circumstance. It doesn't Eregion. Yes, Eregion. Why wasn't he trying to get there on his own accord before he finds Galadriel? You know, why was he going to stay in Numenor and not? I don't know. But again,
I mean, one of the things that jumped out at me was just how quickly they came up with a solve for what Sauron was trying to put into play. It was like, well, he wants 3 rings. We should give him 4. We should make 4. Okay.
Wait, what do you mean by that? Sorry. What do you mean by that?
So it was just really fast and really like, you know, like it didn't feel it. I don't know. It just, to me, it just felt underbaked. Like, here's this conundrum. Sauron has now forced us to make 3 rings. He wants 3 rings.
That's incorrect.
So,
that's incorrect.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
He made one ring to control the flesh men. Once he left, they made 3 more rings without the influence of Sauron. So throughout the lore, Sauron couldn't influence the 3 elves.
Right.
Because he was not there for that process. He left after he made the 1 ring. In season 2, we're gonna get all the other rings he creates that's gonna be controlled. So when he clicks on the gauntlet, everybody's gonna be under control except on 3Ls because they made those in secret without his influence. That's why.
Well, wait. So how many rings did they make?
Right now, it's 4. He made one ring. Then after he left, they made 3 more and said, we do this for ourselves and not with the influence of Sauron.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood the count then, and what the
I didn't catch that he made the ring. I didn't.
That's my assumption after he bounced.
Because when did he do that? I mean, we saw them working on the ring, and then he confronted Galadriel. They go through that sequence of him doing the magical beating her up around or whatever, and then he leaves, and then they create the 3. So I don't see when he creates the one ring, and then they make the decision to create. I see when they make the decision to create the 3, but where did he create the 1? Are we just to assume? And that's a big thing.
That's a big thing. So we either assumed that ring was made because he bounced, or who's going to make that one ring, or does he have the technology to make that ring?
If I'm watching this and I don't know that fact, and I don't see
like
it.
Me?
Exactly. So this is the Achilles heel of Ring of Power. It helps to be familiar with the story.
Right. The source
if you're
material.
coming in as fresh, this may, unless you're a diehard high fantasy type of person, you're just willing to just dive into it. If you're not familiar, it's going to be a tough watch. If you're familiar, you have a little bit more patience with this because you know there's going to be some things that's going to pay off. And you already know like what's ahead. We're just seeing. It's just like watching House of the Dragon. We know what happened in the future. Now we want to see how these events led, or we just want to know this particular era.
And I think that's it. I agree with you. That's the Achilles heel of the whole overall show. Like they assume a lot, and so if you were coming into this cold, like if I'm 13, 14, I've never seen any. I've watched the movies, maybe. But maybe not like all of them, or maybe I only watched the prequels, like the Hobbit 4 movies or whatever. So you're right. I think that's it. It adds to a level of assumption that you have to kind of just generally they're assuming you're familiar with the lore, and I think. But then from a filmmaking standpoint, I just assumed that the reason why Sauron left is because he already had his ring, but I didn't see that. And so, in my mind, I was then when they actually started to make the 3, I was like, oh wait, they didn't make the other ones. I thought they were I literally thought as Rings of Power that the final scene was going to be making all the rings for everybody.
Right.
And all that.
Well, then they play the song is what goes over the credit sequence. The whole song, 3 for the L or however it goes. I'm not going to sing it. And 1 to control them all. We all like things, and I'm not a witchcraft, so I'm not. But
what I think is going to happen, what happened with Rings of Power, or excuse me, Lord of the Rings. I came in at not knowing what the hell that was. I never heard of Lord of the Rings. The movies were done in a way which forced me to read the books, which got me into the movies. After the first one, I read all 3 books before the second one came out, and I was hooked. I was like, because I never heard of this, never grew up reading Tolkien, nothing. Lord of the Rings was my entry point to this whole Tolkien world, and then I went back and did the whole world.
No Hobbit animated movie?
No, never.
Lord of the Rings was extremely well done. I can't stress that enough. Not even just from an adaptation, but from a cinematic perspective. I think you're right. I think you do, in order to go along with this series, need to bring in some prior knowledge. Now, having said that, that presents a problem for Amazon long term because they invested we don't need to rehash that. It's the most expensive TV series in history. So if you cannot grow your audience beyond the Tolkien fan base and the people who just like general fantasy, and over time and hook them in a way that, okay, I may not know everything, but I can go along with some things in order to keep me interested for what's coming next, then that's going to be long-term problems for their sort of overall plan, I think, for Amazon. For the series, it'll be fine because I think, it'll rate well, but,
Yeah, and I think that's the thing overall. It's like it's interesting because like it's crazy that Josh brought up the animated series because that was my introduction. My introduction was I actually read The Hobbit, or the Lord of the Rings, the first one, and then I had watched the movies, the cartoons at the time. And then from once I finished the cartoons, then I went back and read like the other books. So when the real stuff came out at that time, and I remember because when Lord of the Rings came out, I think Harry Potter was out at the same time, around the same, like I think it was like the second one. It was around something like that. But I didn't watch any. I didn't watch any of the Harry Potters because I'm like, why am I watch this stuff when Lord of the Rings is out? Like this is far superior. And I didn't watch Harry Potter till way later. And again, I enjoyed it, but I think you're right. Because they're leaning in heavy on, hey, you already kind of know this. We're just filling in the gaps. And I think that's something that they just didn't pull off as well. And I think that's the thing. What's it called? Like in contrast, like we'll talk about House of Dragons later, but I think that's something that they pull off a little bit better about filling in some of those gaps. And I think for Rings of Power, for the parts that we really enjoy, we're more just like, I wish you guys would have done this better. You're almost there. Like, yeah, I can see, I see what you're trying to do.
See where you can see the visual, like you guys said, the visual world is amazing, and you see the potential. The acting is pretty good, and there are a lot of good things in favor for it. That's why I said it shouldn't be said that. I think everybody should give season 2 a chance because it was only 8 episodes, so we know that one of the other reasons why I'm going to give them a chance is because they went in with a 5-year plan, so they know where they're going. Even if the execution is going to be rocky, they know they have a beginning, middle, and end for where they're taking this thing, and I respect that. And I can get behind that because often in the best examples of TV history, they're the series where the writers go in, they say, hey, here's my 5-year plan. This is how the story's going to go. And that's that. Breaking Bad, Babylon 5, all the best ones did it. So again, for that reason alone, I'll be there for season 2.
And I will say this to end it, like for The Expanse, there was no way in hell I was watching that after I seen the guy that played Punisher, and I was like, hell no. Josh had to convince me to stick with it because I was highly skeptical, and it paid off. Like I didn't want nothing to do with that dude. I was like, I don't never want to watch anything this guy's had anything associated with, and I am glad I stuck with it. So hopefully we can get that same type of magic going forward. We can all look back and say season 1 was meh, but it picked up. And
or we say season 1, these things, all of this good stuff makes season 1 look better in the rewatch because inevitably we'll rewatch it. And maybe that's the thing. Maybe you need to watch it in a binge situation where you go 1, 2, 3, you just watch it.
Yeah. Wire season 2. A lot of people hated Wire season 2, and then when you watch the whole season, you go back, you like the season 2 was important.
It was great. I love
it. It was great when I first saw it, but a lot of people didn't see the vision because they wanted
because it was so different from the first
season. And I think also too, if they would have not called it season 1 and they called it part 1, I think we'd have a different understanding of it as well. I was thinking about this. I was thinking about that as well. If they were like, hey, part 1's 8 episodes, part 2's 8 episodes, then we'd be a little bit less forgiving. Where we're like, oh, this is a full season. Now we're expecting a certain level of narrative. For me, anyways.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird to have a season of 8 episodes, though, Cam. Like,
no, it's true.
Some do it better than others, but Tolkien and it's a lot, man.
Well, I think stripping all those things away, if you got the 8 episodes, then you have to deliver on that beginning, middle, and end of that arc of a serial drama. And so, again, I hope for them in the next round that they understand that now, and even with the plan that they got going forward, they can wrap it back around and kind of make sense of some of the stuff that we saw in season 1 or not, and just move forward and fix the issues that they had in their freshman season. I think these are 2 guys that are the showrunners, have never done a series before. Go figure. Nice being, you know, it's good to it's good to be in a certain position sometimes, huh? Hey, fellas. But
I mean, yeah.
yeah. No, I was muted. I was like, yeah. No, you're right though. I think that's it. I think overall, I think it's one of those things where we're glad we watched it. We're gonna watch season 2, but we're just kind of like in that teetering. Like, yeah, I would, you know what? Let's do this. We'll go around to finish it up. Would you recommend it right now for someone to watch the full 8 episodes? Josh?
Would I recommend someone watch Rings of Power?
Yep.
Not everyone, no. I think it's a certain type of person, a certain type of attention span, a certain attention to narrative that you gotta have at least a fleeting familiarity with Lord of the Rings lore. I think there's some requisites that have to come with that recommendation. I don't think it's for everyone.
Cam?
I don't think anybody that's unfamiliar with Rings of Power would not watch it. Like, if you, in some capacity, if you watch Lord of the Rings, you're into it, you're going to watch Rings of Power. Someone who has not ever watched anything of this whole story, what I recommended, if they said, hey, you got any new shows? I'm like, hey, if you like high fantasy, check this out. You may or may not like it. It's not that bad, man. I watched Merlin. That was bad. And I watched
sci-fi show. That's a flip of the coin.
But this is the point I'm trying to make. I like that type of stuff. Wizards, dragons, King Arthur. So I'm gonna tune in.
Yeah.
So if you're into that type of stuff, you're gonna watch. Just give it a season. If you're a savvy, TV person like some of us here, or you've been in the industry and good writing, you may turn off like episode 3. It may not be your cup of tea, even though you may like that genre. It depends on the person. Is this worth watching? Yes, in certain aspects. 90% of the time, you're gonna watch this stuff, especially if you're into it. You don't have to be a Tolkien fan. You're gonna give it a shot and be like, "Hey, I'm gonna check it out." And then maybe 2 episodes, 3 episodes in, you'd be like, "This ain't my cup of tea." You move on. I wouldn't say this is not worth watching. There are shows that are not worth watching. I don't think this is one of them. So yes, I would recommend this to other people.
And then
I agree with that last part. There are shows that are not worth watching, and this ain't one of them. But with that in mind, no, I would not recommend it to everyone. But like has been said by the other fellas on the panel, I would recommend it to people who like high fantasy, who like the magic in the world of this medieval high fantasy sword and sorcery storytelling. Watch it. I mean, give it a chance. I think it's worth a chance. It's worth giving a shot. I can't speak for Wheel of Time or any other thing else, but Rings of Power is worth giving a shot. They put some effort into it. They're on a learning curve, but if you like Tolkien, if you like high fantasy, if you like the sword and sorcery, go for it.
Yeah,
I will say this: the Wheel of Time and Rings of Power were bundled together as a panel at Comic-Con. People slept through the panel and were almost out of their chairs for the Rings of Power panel. Just saying.
People want to watch it, man. Like, again, it is what it is.
The Wheel of Time get a second season?
Yeah,
I have no idea. I think so. Yeah,
it does. It does. I only know that because they beat us in the head with that at Comic-Con.
Oh yeah, I was saying
they probably a third season probably going to be really, really, really tight for them, depending on what happens with Rings of Power. I would assume.
I think it's going to be necessary based on the little bit that I've seen and how they seem to be setting up. It seems like it's absolutely necessary that you it's almost a waste of time doing season 2 unless you're going to do a season 3 for the story they seem to be setting up.
All right. Well, Well, let's skip that since nobody watched it. I've watched the first episode. That's a whole nother conversation. But
I could not make it through the first episode. I fell asleep. A world record for me, 4 attempts. I fell asleep on all 4 attempts.
Wheel of Time.
Yeah, Wheel of Time.
Yeah.
You good people told me not to turn it on, so I won't.
Bro, I'm just saying I'm holding out until I read at least the first novel. So once I do that, then I'll check out the first season. But for now, Wheel of Time is not on my list to watch.
Yeah,
I'm a huge Rosamund Pike fan, but I can't do it.
I am too, but I got my principles.
Is House of the Dragon out? Finance?
Yes.
Again?
Yeah.
Finale?
Yeah, it dropped today.
All right, I'm gonna watch it right after this.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So with that, we'll sign off, and everybody out there, check out Rings of Power. It's something that was super interesting. If you're listening to this, you probably already did check it out. So this is the table. This is the Table of Truth. This is Blerdlines, and we are out.
Laters.
I know that's Gandalf, man.
The
stuff he's saying, the fact, and Brandy isn't Eleanor Brandyfoot ancestor to Bilbo and Frodo?
Yes. There's no way she's not. I don't even know that for a fact, and I know there's no way she's not.
But the Harfoots are a distant cousin of the Hobbits.
Right, but I think Eleanor Brandyfoot is specifically because I remember reading because I read The Hobbit recently. I remember Gandalf mentioning her to Bilbo and the fact that he went on an adventure with her, and he was using her as an example as a way to kind of push Bilbo into taking the unexpected journey. So that's how I remember her when I was like Eleanor Brandyfoot. Where do I know that name? That's why I know that's Gandalf.
Well, that's a deep cut because I can just go by when he said follow your nose.
Well, that was the low hanging fruit.
Yeah,
right there.
But then there's also when he when he did that power move and it got black behind him.
Yeah.
Well, Gandalf
and the fireflies, the fire, the fact that
there's so many elements that leads this to be Gandalf, even though it does not fit the timeline of when Gandalf should be there, because Gandalf does not arrive until the Third Age. We're in the second.
What told me that they weren't going by that is the fact that is the Sauron reveal.
It's fine. Yeah. It's not a big deal. Again, look, once they got rid of Tom Bombadil, I was like, hey, it's a free-for-all. You do whatever you want to do. You know what I'm saying? Because in my opinion, Tom Bombadil is a major character, but you can't translate that well without having that's a whole different ball game. You can't do that in a movie because that's a whole different character. For someone to be not influenced by the ring, why? You need to know his story. You can't do that with that, and it's just not going to move the movie. And it's
Tom Bombadil in and of itself is just one of the biggest mysteries of Tolkien's universe.
Even the book doesn't really explain who he is. They just say Tom Bombadil is Tom Bombadil.
Yeah, it's again, like I said, there's a lot of stuff a lot of academia written on that figure, and like I said, the most prevailing theory is that that's one of those devices where the author writes himself into the story.
Yeah. It's Jack Kirby from Marvel.
Yeah, writers have done that a lot in literature, and I think Tolkien probably did that with Tom Bombadil, which is why that character is so cagey, but also very, in a way, godlike in what he says about himself, and in his knowledge of everything.
Yeah, yeah.
He's either that or he's Iluvatar in come to the world and wear the cloth of man.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
But so, you go argue Iluvatar is Tolkien too. So.
Like I said, season 2 will, I don't want to say make or break, but it'll just be like, all right, because in my opinion, like when the writers put this story in, like they said we're gonna okay you 5. There's a plan, so you want to hope that this pays off. They're okay, we understand season 1 is gonna be like this. Yep. Wait till season 2. Wait till season 3.
And I was gonna actually say I was gonna almost explain it similar to like The Expanse, where when people try to watch that first 4 or 5 episodes, and it's kind of slogs along because it is quiet and it's like it takes a little bit to get through, but then the payoff is so good. And I was like, in my head, I'm like, this is kind of feeling that same way. So
it could be.
Yeah,
it could
be. And look at what they're doing, because I think that's the thing about the later seasons of The Expanse. Then they amplify what was going on in the first season in those episodes. So if that happens, and again they double time win, because you get the rare honor of saying that this guy was wrong about you, and then you also get the pleasure of having people be like, oh, I'm gonna go back and rewatch it in many times.
Yeah.
Again, the beginning becomes inconsequential if the journey and the destination is boom.
Yeah, 100%.
That's the big reason why Game of Thrones is looked up on with ill will now, because the journey was so great, and then the destination was a fucking popcorn fart, So now people resent going back on the journey. So
yeah, because they know where it ends up. All right, fellas. I'm getting kicked out by my landlord, aka my 9-year-old nephew. He's like, can I get my room back? I'm like, you know what?